That's for anyone watching the video. Because there's this banner here, and I just jump out from behind it. And, like, I can't, it's a thing. We're not talking about gaming. Today, we are going to be talking about Rails. We are introducing Rails, and really, we are introducing model view controller server frameworks, or I should say MVC server frameworks. And we are using Rails as an example. So one of the things in this course is that we teach a stack. And the thing about Rails, there was kind of a joke that Uncle Bob, Robert C. Martin, who's a software speaker, he said, which was in 2014, he's like, in 2014, a Rails developer could just write a number on a piece of paper and then walk around town until someone paid him that number. And it was just the thing. And in the meantime, Rails has become less the case. But that doesn't mean that Rails itself is not, or still a really important and common framework. I'm getting the LinkedIn messages from time to time, and one of the things that pops up is Rails jobs. Yeah, by the way, just to let you know, when you get a couple years in your career, LinkedIn recruiters will be all up in your armpits. They will be like, hey, I thought you had this skill. I'll have a job for the blah, blah, blah. And you're going to be like, oh. And at first, you're going to be like, really? Someone likes me? And then after a while, you're going to be like, all right, y'all need to calm down. I get it. So you have that to look forward to. But the point that you do, like, I want a different job, you will be able to, like, turn around pretty quickly. So, at least I am. Again, your mileage may vary. But what we're going to talk about today is we're going to introduce the concept of MVC frameworks. We're going to kind of talk, we're going to talk about Rails. You're going to generate a Rails, like do a Rails demo of actually creating a something. And we'll do it based on suggestions from the crowd, because that always goes well. And then I have to make a game called No One Likes Scorpio Dan. I think that's just too good a phrase to lose. Yeah. Well, you're Aries Dan. There'll be an Aries Dan who's like, oh, Scorpio Dan. Why can't you get your act together? And then we're going to talk about, like, kind of debugging, or like kind of the Rails flow and debugging the Rails flow. Yeah. Rails flow. Okay. So MVC, this is the talky bit. There are a lot of MVC server frameworks out there. A few of the big ones are, of course, Ruby on Rails, ASP.NET MVC. And ASP.NET MVC is like the Microsoft C#. So this is like C# mostly. And another really big one right now is Django, which is written in Python. Right? And there are more. They are, pretty much for any framework you will have, like for any language runtime, there is probably an MVC framework for it. There's MVC frameworks for Node. There's MVC frameworks for, like, PHP. So these are contrasted with sort of almost the route handler style. Or we might say the middleware style. And I mean, I haven't double checked on this to see how it ended up with ASP.NET MVC, but when I stopped doing .NET, which was about 3 years ago now, 2.5 years ago now? 2.5 years ago now. They were starting to introduce this thing called Owen, which was bringing the middleware style to ASP.NET MVC. And this is, so hold on, MVC frameworks. I'm gonna make this better marked down real quick. Ruby on Rails. I probably need to double check on this, but I know that there's like, I have used one called Code Igniter for PHP. Yeah, watching someone format Markdown, it's amazing. And there's also kind of, like, these are the two dominant things, is the route handler style middleware, which is like, well, legacy PHP, Express, and there's some more like this, like there's Sinatra. You might run in Sinatra for Ruby. And from what I can tell from my like little tiny bits of poking at it, Hanami for Ruby is like this as well. There are more, of course, there's more frameworks than just this, but this kind of gives you a sense of like, they tend to kind of go in this style where either you're kind of dealing with one code that does a lot of these things, or dealing with the MVC frameworks. But regardless of what framework you have, it has to do all of the things a server framework has to do. And generally speaking, we kind of fit these into 3 buckets of things. We kind of put this into 3 buckets. There's sort of the 3 buckets of code. There is providing an interface. There is kind of performing business logic, and there is querying and modifying data stores. Like, these are the 3 buckets of things that you're going to do. And by the way, you may notice, like, this isn't just servers, right? Like, we were technically doing all this in React as well, right? Anything where you have an interface that talks to a data store has this. So the MVC thing predates web servers. The MVC was a model that was there for UIs before we had servers. It's just desktop applications would have this model view controller idea. So in React, we often create components that encapsulate all this, or encapsulate one thing of this. But in React, the component is the main thing. In 7Ls, Express, that's the other thing we did stuff with. In Express, like we technically had 2 separations, because we had EJS on one side, right, which was our providing an interface, and we had, but we had the route, which was like the controller, and then maybe I'll call some data actions. If you put your code in a data helper, like the way that Tweeter is built, and the way that I did suggest you do in your midterms, and I haven't looked back to your code to see whether or not I should be disappointed. I'm just kidding. You guys, midterms is a trash fire. You guys are allowed to kind of walk through that. But if you built, like, it would make sense for you to build data helpers as well, right? To make a file where it's like, when I do something, I put all of my data interactions on their own in one file, just to be like, this is what you're all doing, right? In React, it's like the visual components, the HTML elements, or if you're in React Native, the sort of just the presentational elements provide interface, and they show data and they provide things to change data. That's kind of held by the state. All the state management is that business logic. And then you're querying and modifying data stores. Well, what's a data store to a front-end app? Well, it's the database, but does the front-end app talk to the database directly? No. What does it talk to? A server, right? It talks to an API. So these 3 types of code are still present in your React. MVC isn't just a Rails thing. MVC isn't just like, oh, this is just here. The only difference between an MVC style, and by the way, there's MVC frameworks for front end, like Backbone was a big MVC framework, and when React was created, they said, we're the V in your MVC. Right? So this is a common pattern that you're going to see all over the place. But the idea is that providing an interface, that's View. Performing business logic, that's controller. Querying and modifying data stores, that's model. So if every framework that does these things is technically an MVC framework, why do we have MVC frameworks? What's special? And the special part about MVC frameworks, you may have remembered when we talked about React, when I talked about React specifically, I talked about frameworks and how frameworks have opinions and abstractions. So what's the one abstraction, what's the one main abstraction in Express? You guys remember? What's the one pattern, the one shape that you write your logic in for Express that helps you put things together? Yeah, the request, so the route handler, right? Or really, route handlers are just middleware, right? In React, what was the one pattern, the one abstraction that you would make and you'd build your app out of? Components, right? So in these frameworks, there's just really one shape that you use, and you just kind of use different versions of that one shape. In MVC frameworks, they just have more shapes. They basically have one abstraction for each of these parts. And Rails is going to have even a few more abstractions for things that kind of fit in weird places in the middle. Yes. Well, it is coming. Yeah, but I will actually. You know what? This is a good point. So Rosie asked, "Will you say more about controller?" Right. So when I say business logic, okay, let's talk about the your Tiny app and one of the routes to like create a new URL, and we're talking about the finished version, the version that had of your Tiny app that had all of the functionality. Okay. So, so you make a post to /URLs. What happens? For one thing, should you be able to make a post to /URLs if you are not logged in? Okay, so there is redirect if not logged in. Now, if you make a post I'm going to say example tiny app post to /URLs. So we're going to redirect if they're not logged in, or if this were an API, you'd be saying not a redirect, but also a 401 redirect or a 401 message. If they're not logged in, if they are logged in, we want to get, like, we want to, so if logged in, get user from session. So we want to see if there's a session. We want to get the user data from that session, or get a user ID that we can use to get the user data, right? So we want to, there's going to be some error checking. Like if you didn't put in a long URL, we might want to, so some sort of data integrity check. So, and that might be a 400, right? What's a 400 error? I heard. 400. What are we at? No, 400 is a. Well, 404 is not found. Huh? 400. The 400s are client errors. That's true. I should be more specific. But the 400 exactly is bad request. Data integrity check. So that might be a 400. And if it does exist, save URL to database. And then we would, if this were an API, we would we'd either return the created URL with a 200, one, or redirect to the get URLs, right? So this is like the controller is responsible. It's not responsible for the saving of the data, but it is responsible for saying, hey, model, please go save this data. When I write this, I would write like kind of a, in fact, I may just really quickly, you know, app.post URLs, recres, you know, if bang rec.user, or it might say like const user equals, let's pretend I'm going to do this all synchronously. I think that's easier. Is going to be get user if bang user return res dot redirect login, right? If rec.body.long URL return res.status 400.end long URL required, right? If, and then I would say like maybe equals create URL that rec.body.long URL. I'm going to abstract the creation of the short URL out to this create URL function. I'm going to let it do the work for me. But I'm also going to pass it my user ID. So this is being created with me in mind. So create that. And then I might either say, like I can just say maybe res.redirect to slash like I'll actually send you to the new one, right? In this case, plus new URL dot show URL. That makes sense. So I didn't actually do, like there was a lot not happening here, right? Your guys' Tiny app, of course, is probably littered with all the other stuff, which is fine. But when I write these, I make it so that this thing is just like, I'm going to get this, I'm going to trigger this, I'm going to get this, I'm going to trigger this. I'm sort of like calling on those things to happen. Whether it's like I'm in the middle, I'm going to do some business logic, I'm going to do some checking, I'm going to send this to this thing, I'm going to send this to that thing. But I'm just kind of in the middle of making, I'm a middleman, just making sure that everyone gets the message that they're trying to get. So that's what I mean by kind of controller style logic, right? And when I write my routes, I try to make sure that my routes don't have a bunch of this data stuff in it. So even when I'm not writing it in an MVC framework, I'm writing it in MVC style. Sort of. Anyway. So, so there's 3 buckets of code that you might write, and basically an MVC framework expects you to basically put model stuff in, basically in model classes. Controller stuff in controller classes, and like view stuff in view classes. Well, not really view classes they're going to be, but you see what I'm saying? where it's going to be like there is a specific controller shape, there's a specific model shape, there's a specific view shape. And when you create your logic, certain things need to go in this certain place. And when you break out of that, that's when confusion happens. But once you put your stuff into those classes, it knows how to put them together so that you can like do whatever it is you need to do. And that makes it a lot easier. And because it's predictable, it's great. So the big caveat is that, hold on, this knot is bothering me. Just give me a second. The big caveat is this. This works great for like REST, like things that can be described as REST, things that work well in the HTTP request response. Awesome. This is, and by the way, that's like, so this is 20% of the stuff you can do with web servers that results in 80% of the stuff you're going to do with web servers, right? And Rails is awesome at generating all the code you need to do most of the things you're going to do. When you're starting, but this is where the opinion thing comes in. So, so I've been talking a bit about abstractions. Let me talk quickly about opinions. Well, let me start here. So Rails is great at the 20% of web server techniques used in 80% of the situation. It's 20% of the possible techniques and 80% of the situation you're going to find yourself in. And that might almost be like 1090, truth be told. It is, so it's very opinionated. And some of the opinions are this. For one thing, you are trying to make an HTTP server. You are, it has a real opinion that it really works out well, which is your app logic can be sorted into resources. So in TinyApp, URLs is a resource. You're doing bread operations on URLs, right? That makes sense? And so URLs is your resource. You can get all URLs. You can get a specific URL. You can update an existing URL. You can add a new URL. You can delete an existing URL, right? You're performing bread. And the format that we give you the /URLs is there for a reason. In your week 3 tech interview, like that stuff, it's there for a reason. This is a really common thing. And that is this form of REST, this particular pattern, doing a get on the collection, like you have collections and elements. You do a get on the collection. You do a post on the collection. That's browse and add. Then you do reading a get to a single element, editing a single element, deleting a single element. So like put /patch or delete to a single element. That's your red, I suppose. R-E-D or der. That's a German. Oh, and I forgot about Dre. So, anyone? Nobody's with me on that. Wow. I think we need to have the coffee break now because that was golden. All right. There's someone named Dr. Dre. A few of you may be too young. An excellent gentleman. You might have. You can't forget about Dre if you haven't heard about Dre. But there was a. Okay, your app logic can be sorted into resources onto which you will perform bread operations. And yeah, when you're trying to do this, when you're doing things this way, oh, you can generate so much stuff so quickly. When you want to do something slightly different, that's when you have to write your own stuff. So if you become dependent on the magic, then you'll have to make your own magic. You have to figure out, like, okay, how do I break out of them doing everything for me, right? Another opinion of theirs is basically it's better to have a bunch of built-in functionality. So whereas Express prides itself on being minimalist, Rails prides itself on being, well, I hate to say it, but maximalist. They're going to include a bunch of stuff. And you're going to have, like, almost anything you want to have is going to be there, just like, oh, I just have to find the thing for it. But it's going to be included, which means that your, like, every single Rails app is going to be super bulky. It's going to be bulky to load. It's going to be bulky to run. Your stuff is going to pass through all the steps. You don't get to choose the middleware stream your stuff passes through. I mean, you get to add more things onto it, but it's going to have, like, a bunch of stuff to start with, right? It's not like Express that's like, I don't even know if you want to parse a body, so I'm going to include that as a separate library, right? So, all right, so enough talking about Rails. I feel like I've spent 30 minutes talking about Rails like it's not even in the room. So, one of these fellers, one of those guys, sorry, just doing Stretch Club for a moment. Oh my goodness, we haven't done Stretch Club in so long. Oh, all right, oh, this is embarrassing. All right. Oh, no, that's not good. That's not good. I need to do stretches before that stretch can happen. All right. Okay, so this is going to be super complicated to build a new Rails app. Okay, are you guys? It's going to take a while. Just want to warn you ahead of time. It's really an in-depth process. Oh, I'm not done. Oh, there was an error. Oh, install. Oh, sorry. I needed a gem. Oh, buddy. Ah. Oh, guys. All right, so the first step would be gem install Rails. That would be an important first. This was working last week. All right. Yeah, when I said there's a lot, I meant there was a lot. Okay, so I've created my Rails app. And oh my gosh, everybody, it brought in a lot of stuff. Now, it did bring in a lot of stuff. I see Sass, I see whatever Nokagiri is. I see Rake, I see Action View, Action Pack. I don't, probably Nio for Rails. Action Cable, Job, Mini, yeah. Active Model, Active Record, My Magic, Marcel, Active, guys, it's just Capybara. Get some Capybara later. Thor, Rail Ties, Coffee Rails, for CoffeeScript. RubyZip, Sass, so sassy. Selenium, SQLite 3, Uglifier Web Console. Oh my gosh, there's so much stuff, you guys. So this is what I mean by there's a lot of stuff. And whereas Express is very opt-in, you have to pull everything in, Rails is opt-out. So I'm actually going to rm-rf, lecture demo for a second. And I will say, like, I have the things I like about Rails, I have the things I don't like about Rails. But one of the things I really like about Rails is its help menus. So I'm going to say Rails -- help. And it gives me, you know, the main thing you can do is the Rails new command. And it shows, like, okay, what can we do? Well, we can skip namespace. We can say which database we're going to use. The default is SQLite 3, which is SQLite is a file-based, so that you can have a SQLite file that is your entire database. Really, it's a really good way for doing dev on a SQL database and then, like, going to something else later. Unless you need to, like, dev some stuff that's, like, really Postgres specific. Action mailer, active record. So you can, like, skip a lot of stuff, like skip coffee. Skip coffee. Skip JavaScript, skip TurboLink, skip Bootsnap, whatever Bootsnap is. Edge, no Edge. API, no API. So this is really cool. And we might get into this later. You can make a version that's like, I don't want HTML views. I actually want to just make this in a JSON based. Skip bundle. Webpack. That's right, we got Webpack. Force, pretend, quiet, skip. The Rails new command. So we can say, for instance, skip files that already exist. Configuration. I think one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to skip test for now. I don't need the test files. I'm going to skip coffee. I don't need. And there's a lot of stuff I don't need here. I'm just gonna say Rails new lecture demo. Skip test. Oh, -- test. I'll leave coffee in. It's fun. I like CoffeeScript. All right, I think I'm more of a nostalgia for CoffeeScript than anything else, but that's that. Okay, now what do I need to do to actually run this thing? It's pretty simple. CD lecture demo. And then all I have, I'm going to say Rails -- help now that I'm here. And it's going to give me all the options I have, which is a lot of options. So, Rails console. Oh, actually, let me start up here. The most common Rails commands are generate console server, test system, db console, and new. So, let me do Rails server. Okay, it's now listing on TCP 00003,000, which is equivalent to localhost 3000. Yeah, I'm on Rails. And in other news, I put on enough deodorant. So you'll all be pleased to know. Yeah, so it set up like a bunch of stuff already. So, yeah, this is the. So we see that when I just did a GET request, it says started GET / for 127.0.0.1 at 0800. Processing by Rails welcome controller hashtag index as HTML. Rendering users Joel Shinnis RB / welcome / index.html.erb rendered blah 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 index HTML ERB. Now I can. Here's my lecture demo folder, by the way, which just brace yourselves. There's a lot of stuff. Now here's one you should be comfortable with, gem file. Yeah, there's gem file. has some things you expect. Gem Rails, obviously. SQLite 3, I'm using that. SAS Rails, Uglefire, Coffee Rails, TurboLink, JBuilder. Here's a few things here. If I want to use has secure password, I have to like add this. And then one of the things it has is there's basically 3 environments that Rails is going to assume it'll run in. Development, test, and production. I want to say it's production. Yeah. Anyway. And so we might have things that just happen in development and test, right? I think anything that happens in production would happen in those 2, which is why it's not here. But we can also have things where it's like, actually, I'm pushing to a production site. You don't have to include this stuff. So we have the room to put things here like web console and listen and Spring Watcher listen, right? So, yeah. Reduces boot time through caching, boot snap. Bless you. So this is what a gem file looks like for Rails. Don't save. We have so much stuff, you guys. App is where, like, we're going to get into this. This probably has some names that you recognize from me going on about them a lot, like controllers or models or views. There's also a public, which has a 404, a 422, a 500, and I think, although my brain's now telling me, no, Joel, it's another framework, so we'll see if this actually works. I'm going to do index.html. H1, you are on Rails. Good choice. Oh, and. Yeah. Okay, so I can put an index.html into my public folder. This is like the require static, or the express static middleware from WellExpress, right? Where we can have a public folder that will kind of go through first. Yeah. Well, where's that page? I will tell you where that page is. Because a moment ago, it was at the welcome controller hashtag index, RVGM's welcome index HTML ERB. So it had a default to fall back to for this one that was just further back. So. And then let's just see what happens when we put in a route that shouldn't be there. Like, Rosie? Yeah, no route matches get Rosie. They just don't get you. No one gets me. Wow, this got angsty real quick. All right, so yeah, let's actually create a dependency, or let's actually create like a resource for our site. Now, I say this with fear and trepidation. What's the site about, y'all? Gardening. Oh, I like it. So I'm going to show you how Rails can generate a bunch of stuff for you really quickly. And I'm going to use something called the scaffold. Now, every now and then, I do a thing in lecture that I would not actually recommend you doing in production. Because lecture is a different environment than production, right? With lecture, like, I have to get some stuff done quick, and I have to have something to show you very quickly. And the scaffold does that. When I'm actually doing Rails for reals, that's right, yeah, you got that. All right, when I'm actually doing Rails in my life, I tend to do these as different steps. I will create a controller, I'll create a model, I'll create a something. I'll create a migration, I'll create a something. But I'm going to do all of this all at once. I'm going to create something. So I'm going to say Rails. If I look Rails -- help, we're going to see that one of my options is one of the number one with a bullet. Okay, too much, is going to be generate. All right. So, all right, I'm going to say Rails generate dash dash help. Oh, well, here's the things I can generate. So it says Rails generate generator args options. And here's the thing I'm going to do. I can have an application record, assets, channel, controller, generator. I can generate a generator. It's trippy. Helper, integration, test, JBuilder, job, mailer, migration, model, resource, scaffold, scaffold compose, and rest task. I am going to generate a scaffold. And a scaffold is just like a bunch of stuff all at once. This is also, if you find yourself in a hackathon and you're like, I want to make a mobile app that talks to a REST API, and I want to generate that REST API really quickly so I can work on my mobile app or work on my like front end or whatever, and you want to like be able just to generate that RESTful API like super quickly, scaffold's your man. So, Rails generate scaffold dash dash help. Don't be afraid to use your dash dash helps, y'all. So this gives an example of what a scaffold is. Scaffold's an entire resource from model and migration to controller and views, along with a full test suite. The resource is ready to use as a starting point for your RESTful resource-oriented application. Pass the name of the model in singular form, either camel cased or underscored as the first argument, and an optional list of attribute pairs. All right. So, Rails, generate scaffold plants. I guess we're going to have name string. We're going to have maybe an image URL string. We're going to have maybe like a maybe a location or like country of origin string. We should have some like decimal, or we should have something that's not a string, right? What's a good, description text, we should have that. Liters of water required. How about perennial Boolean? To know whether it's year-round or not. I know that's a pretty stupid, but that just gives us a chance to see. Yeah. All right. Oh my goodness, you guys. It did so much stuff. Let's see all the stuff it did. So, in invoked active record, it created, so it basically ran generate active record. It created a migration and a model. It ran resource route. It created a route for plants. It scaffolded a controller. It created a controller and a bunch of views and a helper and a JBuilder. Created some assets, created some coffee, created some SCSS, and also generated the scaffold's SCSS. This will happen once when we create a scaffold. This will generate the scaffold's SCSS. We're going to go through each of these one at a time, but this makes sense, right? A migration. We've seen a migration, so let's take a look at 2018 create plants. Instead of having an up and down, we just have a change. String name, string image of URL, string country of origin. This is that schema stuff we were doing yesterday. Yeah, this is familiar. Some of you were conscious for that. Let's take a look at app models / plant RB. Plant.rb. But wait, shouldn't our models extend active record : base? Wasn't that what we were doing all day? What's this application record nonsense? Well, I'm so glad I pretended you asked. All right. Application. Let's go models / application record RB. Oh, look. Application record extends active record base. So this has like a couple more things. including that application record is an abstract class. This is an OOP concept. An abstract class means I can make classes that extend application record, and I can instantiate them, but I cannot make an instance of application record on its own. So application record.new will not work. But plant.new most certainly will. Okay. Why would we make? Yeah, we wouldn't. Right, because application record is going to have a few more things that you don't see because there's a lot of, like, that seems like a simple class, but there's things happening there. There's more stuff behind the scenes that I don't want to get into because we don't have the time and because I don't understand them. So, right. Okay, route, resources, plants. So there is a routes RB in the config, and it has added a resources plants. Now, what does that do? Well, I'm going to show you the controller first. Plants, controller RB. Before action, set plant, only show, edit, update, destroy. We'll get there. There's an index. Show. You guys remember URLs underscore index, URLs underscore show? Those names came from somewhere, and they came from Rails. We kind of use them to prime you to think in this way. URLs index, URLs show. Yeah, so index, show, new, edit, create, update, destroy. And we'll get to what that does in a second. But there's actions, there's route handlers. So this is a controller basically has all these route handlers, but hasn't really connected them yet. But if I open up a new tab here, go to CD lecture demo, and say Rails routes, this will give me all of my current routes, which, holy crap, there's a lot that I did not expect there to be. Why is there... Yeah, that's new. Okay. Man, and that's kind of jamming up my desire for this thing to look good. So I'm going to say Rails routes. And open up routes text here. And I think I can take off... How do I take off word wrap? Hold on, view, edit appearance. Oh, toggle word wrap. There it is. Okay, so this is new, but this is the part we care about. There's all these routes now. And ones you should look familiar. So put the prefix part aside for a bit. That's going to make sense at some future point. But we have a get to /plants will result in the plants hashtag index. So when I say get to /plants, it's going to make plants hashtag index do its thing. I'm actually going to go back to this and show these happening. All right? Rails, actually S is an alias for server. So if I do a localhost 3000 to plants, I'm going to get the plants index page, except for the fact that I need to run a migration. Okay, fair enough. Rails DB setup. So this is going to create my database. Rails DB migrate. Rails server. So now we have a table of all of our plants, which we don't have any plants yet. But this get to /plants, well, what it does is it goes to the plants controller, it gets all of the plants, puts them to @plants. Okay, but what does it actually render? Like there's a whole HTML page here. I don't see a whole HTML page here, right? Well, that is where the views comes in. So there is now plants slash index.html.erb. What does ERB stand for? What did EJS stand for? Embedded JS. What do JavaScript files end with? .js. What do Ruby files end with? YARP. All right. So this is embedded Ruby. It's going to be the same concept as EJS, only you're going to be using Ruby expressions and code, like their scriptlets instead of. So this, if there's a notice, it's going to do this, plants, name, blah, blah, blah. For each plant, make a table row of each plant. There's some crazy nonsense going on here that we'll get to. Link end, link to new plant path. Again, more stuff going on that we're going to get to, but here the main point is it's going to get, there's the @plants here, and that is what this @plants is being shared with the view. So this is how we pass view, data to a template. We don't have to call .render in this case because it does some render for us. But that took all of our plants and made a table of them, except for the fact that we don't have any plants. So we need a plant. All right. So let's make a new plant. So this is localhost 3000 /plants/new. How did we get here? Well, if we look at our routes.txt, there is get to /plants/new links to the plant #new. All right. Well, let's look at our controller to see if there's a plants new. I see index, I see show, I see new @plant equals plant.new. I don't see it rendering anything. Like I don't see a line that says, hey, render this, right? So let me go to my views and see if there is a, app/views/plants/new.html ERB. New plant, render form plant @plant. This is being shared from the controller. Link to back plants path. So that is this page. Now, how did it generate a whole form? That is a good question for a later lecture. So let's create the tomato, shall we? Copy image address. Oh, sorry. Image URL. Tomato. Country of origin. Well, for the sake of the demo, it's going to say South America. Easiest cultivated food may have originated with the indigenous peoples of Mexico, so Mexico it is. And let's grab this content. And there's our description. Is tomato perennial? Indeterminate tomato plants are perennials in their native habitat but are cultivated as annuals. Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's an annual because I will be cultivating as an annual. I actually have a tomato plant, and it is most certainly an annual because it just died. So, yeah. So now, I'm going to create plant. And I'm going to do the thing that I might have done with some of you. Go to network, preserve log, right? Create plant. Now, a lot of stuff just happened, but I did a post to /plants. Well, what did it do with that post to slash plants? Let's take a look at our routes text. Oh, there's a post to slash plants, right? Which goes to plants, hashtag create. Okay. Plants controllers create. At plant equals plant.new plant params. There's going to be some hand wavy stuff. If you don't understand something, we're going to just kind of go past it. But if plant save, redirect to at plant. Notice plant was successfully created. Or if we're using JSON, we're going to just render the created plant. Otherwise, we're going to go back to new and say what was wrong with it. Okay? Plant was successfully created. Here's its image URL. Here's its information. And if I go back to plants, I now have a thing. Except for this stupid image, which is being a stupid, right? So here's what I'm going to do. Instead of being, I'm going to go to my index.html here. No, index.html ERB. Instead of an image URL, I'm going to say this is going to be an image source is. And width is going to be 300. And there we go. There's different ways we can format this. Obviously, the description is banana sandwich. The perennial should probably be a little different. We can take out the show, edit, destroy. But you can see how now we have the chance to sort of change the way we're looking at this. Now, these are two parts of this process. Also, by the way, when we went to /plants/1, we can look at routes.txt, get to, now we have the plants prefix and we have the plant action, /plant/id, which goes to the plants hashtag show. And show is destroy. Right now it's hard to see that it does anything. There's a bit of magic, and we're going to get to that in a second. But that is how easy it was for me to generate all the routes I needed. And by the way, just so you know, I also created JSON routes. Go get coffee. It's only been 9 minutes, but you know what? Actually, break continued. We're gonna keep on going. Okay. All right. Oh, that's not how that works. Okay. Another thing I want to show, by the way, is that this entire time, our database has been going. So we've been able to see, insert in the plant's names, image URL, that sort of thing. Okay. Yeah. So, as we go, we're going to be so debugging the Rails flow. We kind of just made a few things, and we saw the things we built. I think up here there's still like yeah. So we have plants edit show new underscore format HTML. We have a helper. We have JBuilders. JBuilders build JSON. That's what they do. That's their purpose. And we have coffee, SCSS, and more SCSS. I want to speak briefly about the assets pipeline. So we've gotten to see, before the break, we introduced the concept of an MVC framework, how it has things like we're going to separate things in different places. It has a lot of opinionation, which is also a common thing in object-oriented programming, where it's just like, oh, you'll obviously want to have access to all of these things. And I think part of that is because with classes, you sort of build stuff early, whereas in like, especially JavaScript is able to, like, kind of able to add things as you go and compose in different ways. So what ends up happening is there is a common joke or phrase about OOP. Yeah, I said joke with bunny ears there. which is called the gorilla banana problem, which is basically an OOP. What ends up happening is if you want a banana, you get the banana, and the gorilla holding it in the entire jungle. Like, it's just, you get a bunch of, like, it's rare to have, like, one thing by itself. You end up getting, like, this whole hierarchy, and you have to have this whole thing, and that brings in that library, and it's all, like, it's a lot. It's kind of a lot. Whereas in JavaScript and more functional programming paradigms, you often just bring in the thing you need at each time and kind of compose them as you go. So with composition, it's easier to make small composable elements that fit together, whereas it's almost like there's one business model where it's like, oh, I will go to this store which does this thing very well. I'll go to this store which does this thing very well, and businesses are able to find niches. And in OOP, everything is Walmart. That's another way of saying it, right? The application controller has all this stuff. So so that's a thing to kind of watch out for, in that it has a bunch of stuff. But so here it created controllers, helpers. Helpers will give us methods that we can use in our views. You're going to hear a lot more about helpers tomorrow from Nima. Mailers, send mail. Our models are here. Our views are there. But I want to talk briefly about assets. So you'll notice the image and JavaScripts and style sheets. And so let's take a moment and talk about CoffeeScript. Now, CoffeeScript is a dialect that translates to Java. Who's heard me talk about CoffeeScript before? Like I've done. Okay, the fact that some people aren't raising their hands and some people are concerns me a great deal, but that's fine. So CoffeeScript is this language created by Jeremy Ashkenaz in 2009, I want to say. It's a little language that compiles into JavaScript. The golden rule of CoffeeScript is it's just JavaScript. Now, that's not to say that valid JavaScript is valid CoffeeScript, but, you know, they're able to do things like number equals -42 if opposite. You know, that creates this. So it brought a lot of Python and Ruby syntax to a language that would compile to JavaScript. And at the time it was created, we had been stuck at ES5 for, well, I guess it would have to be after 2009 then, because we'd been stuck at ES5. ES5 was 2009, and even that was just like, there was a few little changes, but we had been stuck with kind of very old syntax, like from ES3. ES3 was like 99, ES5 was 2009, and it didn't even like add that much more. So basically, web developers had wanted a big update to JavaScript, and it just wasn't happening for political reasons. There was an ES4 that totally didn't even happen, right? It was just hard to get stuff through the ECMAScript TC39 committee, or the ECMA TC39 committee, right? And a guy named Jeremy Ashkenaz is like, okay, well, I'll just write my own language and compile it to JavaScript. And it'll have the features that I want as an application developer that will make me more effective and more, and it'll make me more effective, and it'll make my code more readable. And so he created this, alert I knew it if Elvis. If type of Elvis is not undefined and type of Elvis is not null, and Elvis is not null, alert I knew it, right? So he included everything that he wanted to, including these comprehensions. This is basically a map, math cube num for num and num list. And so this became really popular with Ruby developers who had to do some JavaScript and would like to use a language closer to them, right? Which is why they still support CoffeeScript. They also support Sass because Sass started as a Ruby gem. So it fit well into the Ruby world. So you will sometimes still see in Ruby stuff a lot of, you'll see some CoffeeScript and you'll see some Sass. Well, of course you'll see Sass because Sass is a good way of compiling it. Now CoffeeScript is not like, it's not useless, it's still growing, there's still a CoffeeScript community, but the thing that happened to CoffeeScript wasn't that it was bad, it was that it was so good that a lot of its ideas got rolled into regular JavaScript, including the fat arrow function. Right? That's that. They also have single arrow functions. But there's still a few things I would love to see, like the existential operator would be fantastic. But even their take on classes was basically what got brought into JavaScript. And we look at the language reference. Default parameters. That was CoffeeScript first. Template strings, CoffeeScript first. Multi-line strings, CoffeeScript first. So lots of these things, CoffeeScript first. And so you may still see this code if you find yourself writing or maintaining a Ruby and Rails app. It's not it's not useless by any means. It's still a good language. I think there is a dialect with of CSX, CoffeeScript with XML like JSX, and they still keep on they get to add whatever they want, right? Which is nice. So cool. But the reason that you don't see as much CoffeeScript isn't because it's useless or bad or anything like that. It's because a lot of its ideas got brought in. There was even an iced CoffeeScript that introduced async and await, and now that's in JavaScript. Cool. Right. And also it has semantic white space like Python. So it doesn't have the ends, and it doesn't have, the fact that this is over means that these two fall under that F. So you may find yourself dealing with that. But the main part of anything is the application.js. This says these lines are not, they are not just comments. These are actual, because it says / equals, these are actually bringing in certain things. Require Rails UJS, require active storage, require turbo links, require _tree dot. Now the require _tree dot says, okay, I want you to bring in all the JS. So here there's a plants.coffee. So if I write hoping this works. And I go to /plants. I think there might have been, $is not defined. Because they didn't bring in jQuery, which is fine. Let's go. Just alert. Hi. Right? So that's been brought in. Cool, that's plants.coffee. Let's make another one. Another file.coffee. You don't have to make this just coffee. I'm just sort of just playing with it, right? In fact, it's a good point. Let's make this JavaScript. Alert. Hi from another file. Hi for another file. Hi. Wait. Okay, so let's say that I wanted this plants thing to say hi, and I want this thing to say hi back. Interesting. How about I would say, I don't know. Sorry, this other file. I'm going to make this .js as well. Alert, hi a third time. Hi back, hi a third time. That's not the order I want it to. What if I want it to go in a specific order, though? Because sometimes you want your code to go in a specific order, don't you? What should we do about that? What can we do about that? Why did it come in this order? Well, it came in this order because it said required tree dot, and it went in like Linux order, went in alphabetical order in the file system. Okay, so I guess then maybe what I'll do is be like, all right, 1 plants coffee, 2 dash another file. Hi, hi back, hi a third time. Okay, so now it works. Up to 9 files. Because what happens when I put 10? It's going to come right after 1. It might come before or after the 1, right? Depending on whether dash comes before or after 0. Which is, what do you call that? It's poop. It's poop. So, and then my file structure is a little harder to read because it's got this 1 in front of it. So, and every time I add a new JavaScript file, I have to add a new one of these, right? Which is not cool. So what I can do, I can either decide to say, like, in this page, hey, I want you to require this one. But in my application.js, instead of saying require tree, I can say require plants.coffee. My brain is now telling me that maybe this isn't how this works. Okay. Require another file, .js. I think I might be able to just say another file. Yep. I can even take off the .coffee and let it figure it out. Pretty sure. Yeah. Hi back. And I can say require file. So this will do, so basically if there's a JavaScript file that you are writing in and you want to do something with, just make sure, like I usually take out that require tree and just put each require there because I don't need it to be bringing in, like I don't need it to do an HTTP request for a file of JavaScript that is empty, right? And secondly, I don't need it bringing in an HTTP request for, and second, if it's there and I intend to put it, I should be putting it in my application.js. I should be linking it somehow. If I don't care enough to include it here, I shouldn't be going and grabbing it. Right? Either it's important enough to be here, or it shouldn't be in my page. This is where I can take a little bit of control over some of the magic. Like a tiny bit of control over a tiny bit of the magic. But there it is. Right, style sheets has similar things. There's an application CSS, and it says require tree, require self. Okay, yada, yada, yada. Right. Okay, I want to... if I make this is a link to plant/1/edit, and unsurprisingly, it'll take us to an edit page. There's a /new and a /edit, and all they do is kind of give us a form with which we can create stuff. Now, how they create this form, how they fill this out, this is going to be something for tomorrow. But here we have, we can change this to tomato. We can say it's not a perennial. Update plant. Hi back, hi a third time. Oh, that's going to get irritating. Right? So there's all that stuff. I'm going to go back to here. Right? I don't know why it didn't show up. That's fine. If I reload it, it's going to do yeah, there it is. Right? Now, how do I destroy? This one's actually a weird one. Because I can't just, let's take a look at this particular, and again, this might be a thing that Nima goes over again, and I am fine with that. We're going to do this a couple times here, though. I'm going to get into, so if he goes over it again, it's because it's worthwhile seeing a couple times. Now, when you did a delete button on your Tiny app, what did you do? what did that delete button look like? Was it just like, oh, button, or like just a link? Right. It had a post request. Right. We wrapped it in a form with a post request, like method post, and there's method post and the action of /URL / blah 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 / delete. Right. Did anyone do the method overrides stretch? Okay, so, which is fine. I forgive you. You got through TinyApp. Let's just be very proud of yourselves for that. All right, you did what you had to survive, and I appreciate that. You were doing the best with what you had. And I want you to think of these words when you're thinking about, you know, just people in your life who are acting strange. They're doing the best that they have. You had to create all this stuff, but this just has link to destroy. Plant, method delete, data confirm, are you sure? And this doesn't have all that form stuff. If we take a look here at destroy, we're going to see that here's the TD, and it's just an A tag. Well, that doesn't sound right. An A tag? Data method equals delete. href is /plant/1. Data-confirm is are you sure? Does anyone know what data dash means? A data dash attribute. Data dash attributes are bespoke attributes for your app. They don't have a meaning in, like, you know kind of how href means something specific to HTML, and source means something specific to HTML, and target means something specific to HTML, and action, and method, and there's all these attributes that, like, mean something to the browser, and the browser knows what to do with them, class, ID, those sorts of things. Data dash is, they're just attributes for you. You can make them do whatever you want. So where you see data dash, the browser doesn't have a specific thing it does with data dash. The only thing that the browser will do with data dash is that if I found this A tag, and I'm going to go, and even this is hit or miss. I'm going to say, maybe I'll put this off to this side. I'm going to say let A equals document.query selector A data dash confirm. And my A is now, if we look over here, it's this guy, right? So here's my anchor tag that I've now accessed via the just the DOM API, and I can say a.dataset, and it will give me basically an object that has confirm and method. So if I have a data dash attributes, I will be able to access that in the DOM API via data, and I will often use these to create bespoke CSS, like basic CSS classes. I'll treat the attributes like, oh, so when I did my deck of cards, I have a data dash suit dash IDX and a data dash rank dash IDX, and based on those, I apply different CSS rules. So these are app specific. These are not just general use by these will not mean anything without the CSS you wrote and the JavaScript that you wrote, like doing something about it, right? Whereas form, like a form action and method will do something, right? These are not, those will be useful without this, these ones won't. So, okay, so I've talked about them, but what do they actually do? Well, this is where UJS comes in. And UJS is sort of Rails' own, like, here's some JavaScript stuff I have. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look through the sources. I'm going to Control-Shift-F. That's not what I wanted. How about just F? I'm going to look for data dash confirm through. come on. Maybe I'm going to hide the navigator. That's not what I was looking for. Why did you Control-Shift-F? Sorry. Oh, maybe I was, I might have been looking at the wrong ones. Hold on. There we go. No. No, that just moves that. Cool. Okay, so Control-Shift-F, data-confirm. Okay, let's look at sources here. Active storage, another file self, application self. Oh, Rails UJS. Data-confirm. Okay, cool, we have something here. There is a link click selector. Data-confirm. So it has some selectors. Okay, here's theirs again. And this also has message equals element dot get. So this has a thing called allow action. Handle confirm. This is the thing we care about. Handle confirm. If we look up here, we'll see that button. So if we take that link click selector, we'll see that there's a handle confirm that happens on its click event. Okay, cool. So handle confirm. If bang allow action this. So let's go ahead and click this guy and see what happens. So for starters, we get here. And it's going to get the message, whatever our get attribute data confirm says, which is, are you sure? And then it's going to run a confirm, and a confirm is like an alert, but with a yes, no button. Okay? So let's see that yes, no. Let's take a few of these off. Are you sure? And based on that, it's going to do something or it's not. So let's cancel. Not going to do anything. And now let's do this. Pause and debugger. Let's take off that. Are you sure? Now, if I say I'm sure, then it's actually going to go and try to do the next thing on this, which is the data method delete. And let's take a look at that. Well, here we are getting it. So we have a handle method. And the handle method basically is going to create a form and try to run this. By the way, this is what Ajax looked like before we had Ajax. Is creating a little form with a null input and just running it. Document.append child form, form.query selector type, submit.click, return stop everything E. So what this is going to do is, it is going to create a form to delete. Name underscore method, value is going to be method. There's going to be a hidden tag. So let's actually just run this, make sure we're capturing our log. And we're going to destroy. Are you sure? Yes. Hi. Hi back. Hi third time. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. So we did a post to /plant/1. Well, a post to /plant/1, we don't have that option, do we? If we look at this routes text, there is no post to /plant/1. But you'll notice if we go down to the body here, there is an underscore method delete. So what happened was it sees this underscore method delete and it's like, oh, I should treat this like a delete. And that results in the delete action to /plant/id, which is handled by plants destroy. So what does this line mean? What is if I see plants hashtag destroy, where does that mean I should go? Well, it means I should go to the plant's controller and find its destroy method. Plant's controller, destroy. At plant.destroy, respond to do format HTML, redirect to plant's URL. Notice, sorry, excuse me. Plant was successfully destroyed. Format.json head no content. Now I should also ask, where is it getting this at plant from? I see an at plant here, but for destroy I don't. So there's a set plant function down here that's just being like, hey, based on the ID I got, set my at plant to that, and then I can use that in all the methods. So this is how I get the at plant. All right. Plant params I require. This lets me actually get params from a body, like for create and stuff. So you can see where I use plant params. There's one there. There's one there. Cool. Okay. So that is the entire life cycle of a resource in Rails as we created it, including the really in-depth on like how we actually do the delete action. How Rails does the delete action based on this thing that I created. Now, if we did an AJAX call with an actual /delete, with an actual delete method, like it would be totally solid. That'd be fine. But the reason that you had to put /delete on your routes, like that is the one route in your, Tiny app that doesn't conform to the, like that is extra on top of this. And that's just because we couldn't do method delete. Although if you did the method override, you would have been doing these underscore method delete. That would have been part of it. Okay. Loud people are loud. So Rails is magic. It is awesome at creating a bunch of stuff. And I want to kind of address the two reactions that I have had in this room this morning already that are also the two reactions I always see when we start introducing how Ruby's and Rails and like Active Record does things. So the first one is, that is too much magic, right? And I think part of that comes from a wanting to understand how things works, which is not bad. That's not a problem. That's not a problem. I will say that, A, you're going to be junior developers. You're not going to get to choose your stack more often than not. You're not just going to be like, I want this job. Where we use your Ruby on Rails. Ha! No, and then walk away. It's going to be, you can, but it's going to be a little more difficult for you. And and you're not going to be able to understand how everything works. You're not going to be able to be like, I won't use this. You can't say, I won't use this until I know every step of the way what it does. That's not an option you have. And not only is that not an option you have, it's not a great strategy. Your point isn't to understand what you're doing. The point of your role is not to code. It's not to create code. It's to make product, and this helps you make product. So the fact that it's generating a bunch of code that you don't have to helps you get to make product quicker, which is awesome. Other side of this is, I can't believe Connects. I can't believe Express. All the work they made us do, I could have just generated this all really quickly. Like, well, yeah, that's true. And there are frameworks in Node to do things like this. There are like ORMs and things. And there's just patterns you can use to generate a bunch of stuff if you wanted to, right? There's nothing stopping you from making a function that returns a router that has all of these routes built in, right? Like you can just be like, hey, here's your it's /plants, and here's your, or like I want a router, here's some of your data methods. Just give me a router with all these data methods. Like you can do that. Like you can just make a function that does that. It's pretty simple. You can make the repetition happen, the code repetition like mechanisms yourself. That's fine. So I would say that this doesn't mean, okay, cool, it was a waste to know those things. It's not. And as you're getting into them, the real danger of the magic is that you're going to get further and not be able to, you're not going to know what to do without the magic. You're going to become dependent on, like, I don't know how to function without magic, right? It'd be like someone who's like, I don't necessarily like Walmart's business practices, but I have no idea how to like fend for myself if Walmart closes, right? It'd be good to figure out how to go to a farm market and pick a zucchini, okay? It would be good to like, it's going to be important in time to know how they work so that when you need to do something that they can't quite do for you, you know how to do that. Now we're going to go in a little bit on how to sort of like break out the patterns. But I'm going to go just to recap the route, the path of Rails. Whenever I am trying to debug what happens with a student's code, first I go to Rails routes. Now, of course, this one is garbage. So I think there's something I can leave out that will make it less garbage. But here I go. Get, post, get. Right? I have no idea what active storage is. Are they just putting... I'm going to take a look into that active storage. That looks interesting. But yeah, plants new. So when I look here, this is how I know, like, okay, so what is something supposed to go to? And this is how I trace that. So the route says, given a certain route, I know which controller and which method to look for. Plants hashtag destroy, also a good name for a mobile game. But plants hashtag destroy is means that there is a plants controller, right? That's going to have a destroy method, and I know where to go to for that. I will say that the model and the view and the controller in Rails are a little too chummy. They're a little too close. They're a little too accessible from each other in a way that just makes me a little bit uncomfortable. I don't like views that knows what the model is doing. I don't like views that can access the model for like, there's some danger in that. That's some like, that's not awesome. But yeah, the next thing I have to find is just like, if this doesn't have a render, that means, or doesn't have a redirect or something like that, that means that there's going to be some render happening, and I just have to find that. So yeah, plan.destroy, respond to new format. If I'm wondering, by the way, I want to write something to my model, I want to make, like, you know, all the stuff we talked about, hey, I want to make a specific query. By the way, here's a tool that I have realized I never quite use enough. And I start using it more and more, and I might be using enough, but haven't probably used enough. And this is awesome sauce. If you want to try to use some of the code in Rails without having to go to the server and run the whole thing, you can just say Rails console. And you get a REPL that has access to all your code. Plant.create. I may say tasty that's not what I meant, like even a little bit. Anyway, my point is that I can actually create stuff here. So this is a great way to shortcut, like, hey, I just want to see how this works in my thing, and I can do all this stuff. I often use this. I use this more than anything to do, like, to kind of test out queries. I find that when I try to write queries in my code the first time and they don't work, I'm kind of stuck. So this is often where I will try out my queries and then I'll turn them into scopes. The console is a great place to figure out, especially when you're writing more code, if your code works. Just want to see, like, really quickly, hey, does this one have this? Does this one have that? And I can identify when the code works without having to like go through all the steps of like rendering a page. Rails console. If you want to get directly to the database that you are touching through this thing, so let me, I have to say quit, I think, yeah. You can do Rails DB console. And now I'm using SQLite. Oh, I'm going to use the .help. Show the current values, various settings. Save, quit, open once. This should be able to show me. Let's just do select. And of course I don't have any, so. But I'm going to make sure it's like, yeah. So at least there's a plan, it's just I didn't have anything to show me in that one. And I can insert stuff into, maybe select count. 0. Awesome. So Rails DB console lets me get to that DB immediately without, if I'm using pSQL, it'll go through pSQL, but now I don't have to in my dev mode. All right, are there any questions? Are there a million questions? Are there like a million questions that you haven't even been able to form yet? Super, that's where you're supposed to be. Mission accomplished. If you're like, oh, I get it, then I failed. So Rails, yeah, I highly recommend that if you are skeptical about Rails or like a little too enamored, like if you just fell in love, like just wait, because you're going to get into a relationship with Rails where it's just like, you do a lot of the stuff I want, there's some stuff that's a little more difficult. It takes me a while to learn to communicate in the way that you're ready for, right? Basically, Rails is like really helpful, but when you do something outside of its expectations, that's where it gets a little bit like, yeah, I don't know what to do. It's like, you know, you take it salsa dancing and it's all conscious. All right, so yeah, thanks so much for your attention. I will have notes and talk to you guys later.